Honorable Justice and Solicitor General and Keeper of the Great Seal.
It is an honor to rise, Madam Speaker, to speak in response to the speech from the throne and provide my maiden speech. I also want to thank my constituents of Calgary-Elbow and the team of people that helped get me here. So many times over the last year, it's actually this campaign that we launched was over a year ago. We were out door knocking in minus 30 degrees temperatures with large teams of people, and every time our team wondered whether or not our volunteers would continue to come out, people kept coming, because this campaign that we ran mattered to them, and it mattered to people of our community, and it is absolutely humbling to be the representative for Calgary-Elbow. I'll get into and tell a little bit of detail about my constituency here, but it truly is a unique constituency in the city of Calgary. It's known with the name Elbow. People sometimes think of it just as one part of the constituency, but it truly is a diverse inner-city constituency for in Calgary. We have some of the highest density areas for rental properties. We also have the Mount Royal University. We have Chinook Mall. We have areas as well that are impacted by flooding of 2013. So it's a very diverse constituency with lots of different needs and also requests of their elected officials. So it's a true honor to represent the community and be here to be able to give this speech today. The constituency also has a deep and storied history of elected representatives. Some of them are very colorful. One of them is the former Premier Ralph Klein, known by many affectionately as King Ralph. So when you door knock and you talk to constituents that remember King Ralph, and they remind you on a regular basis that he held up a sign saying paid in full, it is an often reminder that how important this job is and how important it is to get Albertans back to work. Also, not a day went by on that campaign where we didn't talk to somebody that was struggling. We didn't talk to somebody that was wondering whether or not they were going to be able to make their mortgage payment or whether or not their kids were going to have a future in this province. So from them, I've received your messages loud and clear. I will hopefully represent you throughout this term with dignity and respect and make sure that I continue to listen to you. I look forward as well to getting back at the doors here in the fall. Our team, I know we're probably up there for some of the most door knocking in Alberta, but we made it through our entire constituency 5 times. And that truly was a grounding experience as well to make sure that we heard people, that we understood what their concerns were. So again, a huge thank you to my team and everybody there on the ground. Also, it's an honor to serve as the Minister of Justice and Solicitor General, also, as you mentioned, Keeper of the Great Seal, which is one of my favorite titles. It's just such a foundation of our democracy to preserve our justice and make sure that Albertans know that they can live in a strong and free society. I don't take that lightly. I also want to thank my family, and I'll get into some remarks about my beautiful wife, Jen. But I also want to say just a few things to my 2 amazing daughters, Heidi and Stella. The one thing that really got them excited over the last year was when I got the call to be asked to be in cabinet. Their response was, yes, water slides. So to them, the West Edmonton Mall water park was the highlight of Dad's political career. It puts things in context sometimes as to what it was. And I must say, I was disappointed that the loop-de-loop water slide with the pit, that's kind of that pinky purple one, was not in operation that day. So my children are determined to take Dad back to the West Edmonton Mall water slide so we can take on that challenge as well. Also, my parents, Ed and Karen, had the opportunity to come and see me be sworn in as an MLA. And my mom was a school teacher. My dad was an entrepreneur. Also, my dad was also an Edmonton police officer. When he was a young boy, at that point in time, there's no high school in his community here in Alberta, and he actually came to Edmonton to go to Concordia. So he went to Concordia, and after that, he went on as a late teens, going into the Edmonton Police Force, where he served for a number of years. His claim to fame, he told me, was that one time when he was in a high pursuit chase, he rolled his police car and got himself onto the front page of the Edmonton Journal. Luckily, it was not his photo, but yet that of his car upside down. So that was his claim to fame here in Edmonton when he was a young man. I also just want to talk a little bit about my family history as well in this province. My grandparents experienced a war-torn Europe on my dad's side in World War I. My grandma remembers what it was like having Russian troops live in their home. And both of them didn't know each other yet, but as young teenagers, both set out for a country of hope, that they knew that they could have prosperity, the ability to farm, and hopefully live in peace. And both of them chose to come here to Alberta and set up near Goodfair, which is in the Peace Country close to Grand Prairie. They raised 8 children. My dad was one of them, and it's just immensely proud to see how many of my family members have gone on to stay here in this province and make this home. On my mom's side of the family as well, long history in Alberta. My great-grandfather, Richard Longhurst, was a member of the 89th Battalion, which was recruited across Alberta and mobilized in Calgary. He went on and was wounded at Vimy Ridge. When he came home, he never actually spoke about the war or his experiences that he had when he was there. But one of the things that I've seen and my mom preserves is the notes that he actually would send back to my grandfather, Master Eric, he would actually send him. Also the photo that he had actually with the Winnie the Pooh. The Winnie the Pooh is one of the most precious items that he sent to my grandfather. My grandfather also went on to serve in World War II, where he served and volunteered, and actually wasn't there for the birth of my mother. He didn't get to see her until she was about a year old, I believe, when she was a young girl. But I'm also going to turn now, I just want to say that it's humbling just to kind of see the history of your own family. And I'm actually very, very moved by my colleague, Minister Madhu, and his story about his family and how far his own life story has come. And also we all stand on our family's histories. And for me, it's just grounding. I'm thankful for everything that everyone has ever done to get me to this point in my life. And it's just with deep honor that I say thank you to them and everyone in my family to this point. I want to turn now to why I decided to get into politics. As many people in this room know, I'm a restructuring lawyer by trade, which many people don't know what a restructuring lawyer is, but we help companies and people in financial difficulty. And over the last number of years here in the province of Alberta, too many Albertans have been facing financial challenges that other jurisdictions facing similar issues policy-wise were not facing. And time after time, I would meet people. I'd meet husband and wife who had built a small business here in this province, and they were having a tough time. They couldn't make payroll. There was economic challenges. They could accept that there were economic challenges, but they couldn't accept the policy framework here in Alberta that they felt was working against them. And time after time, we'd go out to the market. We'd try and see if we could come up with a solution so they could keep their employees, they could keep the people that they cared about working here in this great province of Alberta. And time again, we simply could not find them the resources that they need to keep the lights on, to keep it going. So too many times I'd see these people go away, tears in their eyes, knowing that they'd actually have to go to their employees and face them, people that are family to them, and tell them that they'd have to turn the lights out. All the equipment would go to the auction yard. Ritchie Brothers auction yard was full here in unprecedented levels, Madam Speaker, and it's unacceptable that Albertans have had to live through that in a way for the last 4 years. So seeing so many people go through this, I felt compelled to get up and run, Madam Speaker. And it hits me at a personal level because my own family in the early 1980s went through a very similar circumstance. My mother had taken time away from being a teacher to raise us as a kid. And my parents had started a small business. At that point, in the early 1980s, we faced national energy programs. We had 20% interest rates, and we had failed policies that economically devastated the West. And for my parents, they had their small business. They lost their small business. We lost our home. I remember an extended period of time of my youth with a great uncertainty as to what the future would hold. I remember what it was like to have an empty fridge. I remember overhearing my parents talking about whether or not they're going to be able to pay their rent. I do remember the great charity of our church and community. Time and time again, people in our community stepping up to help our family go through some great difficulties. And my parents are my ultimate heroes in life. I was asked one time in the media, who do you truly respect? And it's my parents. And the reason why I respect my parents so much is that they never quit. They never gave up. They always wanted to be an example for me and my siblings. So to them, I say thank you for everything that they did for us to get us to where we are. And my parents did recover, but it took them an immense amount of time. I really didn't have stability financially in our lives until I was about 11 or 12 years old as a kid. but my siblings were older than me. I was the youngest one. They remember it more vividly than I did. But my parents did recover. They're now comfortably retired. My dad decided to retire at the age of 82. He kept working throughout his life, had that work ethic. My brother went on to become an accountant. My sister went on to become a well-published professor at York University. And I decided to pursue the really conservative profession when I was younger, or at least tried to make it a profession of becoming a baseball player. For me, I decided that I wanted to pursue that. So I had the great fortune of going on and playing college athletics in the United States. The one thing about being a pitcher, though, and I got opportunity after opportunity because in baseball I was strong. I could throw hard. I could stand at home plate and throw a ball out of the baseball stadium. But for some reason, when you're a pitcher, to be able to take that to that next level, you have to be able to throw strikes. And that was one thing that was lost on me. I would walk a guy, hit a guy, strike a guy out. And after years of catchers groaning about having to catch for me, I decided that maybe some other path was in the future for me. So that's when I came back to Canada at that point in time. Looked at my somewhat jumbled transcript, I would have to say, after attending many different undergraduate institutions, pursuing my dream of baseball, and realizing that it would take me just as long to finish my undergrad as it would for me to go to law school and just finish that. So I decided at that point in time to write the LSAT. It didn't occur to me at that point in time in my life that people actually prepared for the LSAT. So again, I decided to write the LSAT, drove up to Kamloops. It wasn't available where I was, so I drove up to Kamloops at that point in time, wrote the LSAT that morning. One of the things that I learned from writing that LSAT exam as I compared that to my law school exam experience was that I needed to wake up a little bit earlier than just showing up at the exam right when the bell went off. But I did well enough to get into the University of Manitoba. I'd never been to Winnipeg before, but I heard it was a nice city, and I decided to go to law school at the University of Manitoba. And I am very fortunate that that happened in my life, because that's where I met my wife, Jen. My wife, Jen, was a first-year law student like myself. She met me and quickly turned around and decided to run away. She thought I was an American, because I still had a little bit of an American accent, apparently, at the time in my life. But luckily, her last name and mine were both towards the end of the alphabet. So we were in many classes together. And shortly, around Christmas time of that year, we started dating. And by the time we graduated, we decided to get married. Now, my wife is one of the most determined, smart, savvy individuals that I've ever met in my life. And she is the truly greatest partner. For me personally, she saw definitely, I don't even think I was a diamond in the rough. I'd probably a lump of coal at the time in my life from a refinement standpoint. And she stood with me throughout that. To speak to her patience, when we were set to graduate law school, I was involved in a few different things at that point in time. And her patience is to the point where we graduated law school on a Friday. I was involved in a political campaign. It might shock people here that I was involved in a political campaign, but I won a leadership campaign on the Saturday, and then we got married on Monday. So in one weekend, we graduated, I won a campaign, and we got married. So I helped with the flowers a little bit on the Monday, but other than that, Madam Speaker, my wife is truly an amazing woman. I also want to turn to the first year of our marriage and getting back again to my patience of my wife. She got an articling job right away. She got an articling job in Manitoba. She was born and raised Manitoba girl. She got a job in Manitoba, her dream job doing criminal defense work. So she got a job there. I, on the other hand, did not get a job in Manitoba. So I went through the interview process, and they looked at me and said, I don't know how you're exactly going to build a business here in Manitoba. You're not from here. And they took a pass at that point in time in my illustrious law student days. But at that point in time, I had a chat with my then fiance and said, okay, well, what are we going to do? Obviously, I need to work. Let's take a look at where in Canada do I want to be? Where in Canada do we want to be going forward? So we took a look at an amazing city called Calgary. And I remember to this day the difference in experience that it was like actually going to that interview. At that point in time, I was interviewing with a law firm called Bennett Jones. And the experience that I had with those folks, they told me literally in the meeting, we don't care who your parents are, we don't care where you come from, we want to know you have a good head on your shoulders because here in Alberta you can make it. And I was sold at that point in time. I told my wife, this is where we need to be, this is where our future holds for us and our family, we got to make this work. And my wife, we spent the first year of our marriage apart in different cities, and now we're here.